two of the most skilled guards this league has ever seen, but their greatness came in completely different ways. In their primes, who was truly the better player? Kyrie and CP3's best skill sets are completely opposite from one another. Kyrie Irving has more of a score-first type of mentality when he approaches the game, while CP3 is more of a floor general, pass-first, old-school type of point guard. I, like a lot of you probably did, was just scrolling through my TikTok feed one day, and this debate popped up on my For You page, and I found it fascinating listening to other people's arguments.
Somebody made the argument that prime Chris Paul was better than Kyrie Irving, and I'm not gonna lie, I can't agree with that. First of all, yeah, Chris Paul was crossing people up, but Kyrie been doing that his whole career. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Y'all can't put Kyrie Irving under Chris Paul.
Guys, Kyrie Irving is clearly better than Chris Paul if you've never watched a full NBA game in your life and only watch YouTube highlights. The Kyrie propaganda is out of control.
I just wanted to sit down today and give my thoughts about the argument, my 2 cents. So first things first, when you look at these two, I think obviously Kyrie is the better scorer of the two. I think Kyrie is one of the most talented scorers this league has ever seen. I think he has zero weaknesses in his offensive game. He's a legitimate 3-level scorer. His ball handling is crazy. There's really no best way to guard him. If you need a bucket, just get out of the way, he's gonna get you a bucket, man. Now, just because I say that Kyrie Irving is the better scorer of the two, that doesn't mean I don't think that Chris Paul is a capable scorer, because he's more than a capable scorer. If you look at his numbers, he's had seasons where he averaged over 20 points per game easily, and I think that if he approached the game differently, he could have had a lot more seasons where he averaged 20 plus points per game. But that's not the way that Chris Paul approached the game. But Chris Paul approached the game from a pass-first mentality, getting his teammates involved, running the team. That was more of his mold, his mindset. But if you watch Chris Paul play, he was surgical from the mid-range area. Every time he would curl over that pick and roll and rise up for that mid-range, it didn't matter who was guarding him. He was surgical in that area. He was lethal in that area. Every time he put that shot up, I honestly thought that shot was going in. If you look past the scoring note, I really have a hard time finding anything that Kyrie Irving does better on the basketball floor than CP3. If you look at the passing and vision, I think it's obvious that Chris Paul, one of the greatest passers this league has ever seen, is a better passer and playmaker than Kyrie Irving. Not saying that Kyrie Irving is not capable of making plays, but there's levels to this. It's obvious. Chris Paul's at a whole nother level. Chris Paul is the master of the pick and roll and manipulating defenses, reading defenses and how their coverages are, and finding the open man and making his teammates better. I think Kyrie, his best playmaking comes from him breaking down his defender one-on-one, having the defense collapse on him, and him finding the open man, making the right read. But I don't think that Kyrie operates in the pick and roll the way that Chris Paul does. Nowhere near. If you watch the game of basketball, yeah, that's a no-brainer. If you want to look at ball handling, I think both players are elite ball handlers. I just think that they are elite in their own ways. Kyrie is more creative. I think that he has probably the best handle the league has ever seen. But I also think Chris Paul is an elite ball handler as well, just in a different way. He's more purposeful with his ball handling. It's more tight, it's more situational. It's not just a highlight reel. It's, I need to make this move, I'm gonna make this move. If you wanna say Kyrie Irving is a better ball handler than Chris Paul, I would have to agree with you personally, but I don't think the gap is that big to really make a difference in this debate. If you wanna look at the aspect of defense, I think that Chris Paul clearly is the better defensive player than Kyrie Irving was in his prime, and I don't think that it's necessarily because Kyrie Irving is a liability on defense. I just think that Chris Paul, he has more of a scrappiness to his game, more of a scrappy mentality, and it's obvious in some of the plays that he made throughout his career in his prime. And I just didn't see that level of scrappiness from Kyrie all the time. Whenever Kyrie was locked in, he was more than capable of being a good defender, but I don't think that it was as consistent to the level of what Chris Paul was in his prime years. Chris Paul had years where he was on the all-defense team, and I hate referencing, honestly, who makes the all-defense team. A lot of that is reputation, but for him to have 6 all-defense teams and Kyrie to have none, you could look at that and be like, okay, that player's obviously the better defender. If you want to look in the aspect of leadership, I think that Chris Paul obviously is the better leader than what Kyrie Irving was. I think that Chris Paul, a lot of the reason why Chris Paul is still in the league right now is because of his leadership. In his prime years, you would constantly see him pointing out defensive coverages, pointing out mistakes that his teammates are making, pointing out where players need to be. Like, that's literally what he was. The floor general, the on-court coach. He was the president of the Basketball Players Association. Like, the dude, he's a born leader. And Kyrie, I hate to say that Kyrie Irving is a bad leader just because a lot of that has to stem from his time in Boston. And I think that his time in Boston, he definitely made mistakes, but that doesn't necessarily define who he is as a leader. I think that if he got another opportunity to be a leader of a team, I think that he would have excelled at it. Players rave about him all the time. People have nothing but love for Kyrie. Even his teammates back in Boston, they speak highly of him. I don't think somebody who would be a bad leader or a locker room cancer will be talked about as highly as Kyrie Irving is talked about by his peers. So that's why I don't like to buy into the fact that he's a bad leader. But we have seen the leadership qualities of Chris Paul. We haven't really seen them from Kyrie. I think Kyrie, he would say it himself, he's better off as a number 2, more of a scoring Robin instead of being a Batman. At the same time, I don't think that makes you a bad leader, though. I hesitate to say that, but if you want to gauge the leadership between Kyrie Irving and Chris Paul, I think it's obvious Chris Paul has them in that aspect as well. Even if you want to look at the individual accolades both of them have accumulated throughout their entire careers, Chris Paul has more All-NBA teams. He's made more All-Star teams. He's made more All-Defense teams. He's led the league in steals and assists multiple years throughout his career. Kyrie Irving has not done any of that. Kyrie Irving does have the championship that has eluded Chris Paul his entire career. But how much weight does that ring really carry when you talk about this debate when he won that ring as a Robin? If Chris Paul would have played some of his years with the LeBron James, do you think that he probably would have had a ring? I think maybe. I think there's a very strong chance that Chris Paul and LeBron James teamed up in their prime years, they would have won a ring potentially. But you could also ask that question vice versa. If Kyrie Irving never played with the LeBron James, do you think that he potentially could have evolved into a Batman instead of being known as the Robin like we know him today? Maybe. I think that there's a chance that he could have evolved into that Batman, learn how to become a better leader, learn what it meant to lead a team, and eventually he could have figured it out. But however, at the end of the day, this is how their careers played out. We have to look at it at face value and see what it is for what it is. And if you ask me, I think that Chris Paul is the better player than Kyrie Irving. But if you had to ask me who I would choose between the two, if I could have one of the two players, I would probably take Kyrie Irving. Not out of anything other than I just like him more. I don't know. Every time I watch that highlight tape, it does something to me, man. Like probably a lot of you that's been watching these highlights throughout this whole video. So those are just my thoughts. I just wanted to give my 2 cents. Let me know in the comments who you think is better between these two players, Chris Paul or Kyrie Irving. Please keep it respectful. Don't let it get toxic in there. It's not that big of a deal. It's the off season. But yeah, other than that, I love you guys and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.